Monthly look at what's happening in and around New Jersey's largest city. And now, here's your host, Michael Hill.
Welcome once again to WBGO's Newark Today. I'm your host, Michael Hill. We're going to have on Mayor Ras Baraka in just a short while, talking about some of the issues that have a direct impact on Newark and a direct impact perhaps on you listening and watching this broadcast tonight. We want to talk about policing in the city, what the ecosystem is here for public safety, all the groups that have been doing so much to make Newark a safer and a better place. And we'll also be talking about a new affordable housing initiative just launched today by the city of Newark. That's in our first half hour when we'll have the mayor. Then in the second half hour, we'll talk about the big announcement that just took place about the Lionsgate Newark, the big studio and sound stage that's coming to the South Ward to be completed perhaps by 2024 in March. Let's get straight to this now. Mayor Ras Baraka, the Honorable Mayor, is joining us. Mr. Mayor, good evening, and thank you for joining us, sir.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to be on with you guys.
Always a pleasure, sir. Thank you. I want to talk to you first about the council runoff elections that took place just the other day. It looks like you are retaining, as they say, the balance of power now on the council. Is that correct?
Well, I think, ultimately our goal is to make sure we get 9 votes all the time, and I think we've even throughout the 8 years have gotten a majority support on the council. So our candidates who we endorse, we happy to have them. We glad that they won. That's for sure, wholeheartedly. Yep.
Now, how does this, as insider NJ's Max Pizzaro put it the other day, that it's a 5-4 balance of power, and how does that? What impact does that have on your agenda for the next 4 years?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of that is just sensationalism, honestly, like people trying to drive people to their sites and create all this like drama. But at the end of the day, like I said, we get majority of the votes most of the time. But what it does, if you don't have that, when most things have to go before council and it delays it, it slows it up. Sometimes it makes it almost impossible for us to get things done. There's a lot of stuff even now that that we're trying to get through, violence prevention, dollars, money for street paving, all kind of stuff right now that's in the council or the city clerk's office that we're trying to get through now.
And what's the holdup?
Well, I mean, some of it is, just bureaucracy on the city clerk side. And some of it is, council wanting to over and over again to hear people come before them and speak to them. And they have a right to examine and check what's going on, and that's their job to, check what's happening. But ultimately, that there's a huge agenda and a lot of things that are happening. We need to try to get them through.
So would you say that this deliberative process is somewhat holding up progress in Newark?
I mean, I wouldn't say that. I can't see progress being held up out here. I mean, we still got billions of dollars worth of development happening. We still investing in affordable housing. We still, hiring police officers and creating the Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery. There's some nuances to that we have to get through, whether it's community-based organizations trying to get paid for the work that they do, to us getting, state contracts passed to get money passed through to our agencies to do the work that they need to do. All of those things, and it gets to be cumbersome at times.
Now, I'm curious, what have you not accomplished in your first 2 terms that you're looking to accomplish in this 3rd term?
More community-based development. We just had a huge meeting today of nonprofits, small developers, the mid-sized developers, CDFIs, City of Newark folks to talk about deliberate and intentional community-based development in neighborhoods. And we were doing that, but it was more arbitrary as opposed to very intentional and deliberate targeting neighborhoods. We're going to start targeting neighborhoods and communities and investing, partnering with small-based organizations and nonprofits to do the work, and actually putting deed restrictions on property to make sure that it stays affordable. So basically creating land trusts in various communities to develop land and make sure it stays affordable, both city land and private land, which is more private land than city land. And even if we create a fund to acquire a property, do acquisitions, that was raised today in a meeting by one of the folks that were there. We want to do that. And so the people like the Urban League can continue to do the investment and development that they're doing.
You must be anticipating some kind of pushback, though, from landowners and property landowners when you start talking about deed restrictions.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what's happening is, I mean, the Who Owns Newark report came out, and everybody is focused on, big scale developers like BlackRock. BlackRock who uses pension funds from the state to buy properties and invest in communities, 30, 40, 50 properties apiece. But there are a bunch of small developers too that use lending institutions because banks won't allow them to, won't give them the loans. And they use those to buy properties, flip them to folks who then rent those properties. And because they're new or refurbished, they raise the rents at exorbitant rates, making it difficult for people to leave there. And these are just small and single base 2 and 3 family home guys who are trying to make a little bit of money for themselves. And so we have to partner with them and put subsidy in those projects the same way we put subsidy in projects downtown to help them keep the prices low. So the consumer is not, basically absorbing all of the cost that's on the top, and putting deed restrictions on property, city-owned property, to make sure that they stay affordable, and even surcharges on people who raise the rent year over year above 5%.
Yeah, we had Professor Trout on in our last show talking about Who Owns Newark, talked extensively. When you start talking about subsidies and so forth for this kind of initiative, where does that money come from? Is it money that the city generates, or are you relying on state aid, federal aid?
Well, it's a little both. You get federal aid, you have home dollars that we invest, we have grants, on the city side, we involve the state. The state, helps us through DCA and New Jersey Mortgage Finance Agency. All of those folks help out. But we also have an affordable housing trust fund that was started, a while ago, that we replenish with our inclusionary zoning ordinance. Developers have to put money in there, and we can use that money to subsidize some of these projects. Even talking about things as large as co-ops and home ownership through condos, turning Section 8 folks not just into homeowners in terms of the traditional house, but into condominium owners as well. So there's a lot of intentional creativity that's being developed because of this discussion.
Mr. Mayor, when you think of your second term, how much of the pandemic, COVID-19, did it slow, stall, or stop your agenda?
I think one thing it did, I mean, in terms of development, it didn't really. But one thing it did do is our ability to engage with residents, with homeowners, to go to block associations, talk about what needed to happen, street pavings, cleaning, all of the basic services that people were used to. We had 2 whole years where we could not deliver those services in the way that we needed to, right? I mean, you're talking about people in DPW who were sick. You're talking about, all of the folks, all of the agencies that people went to get assistance and help were closed, whether it was, jobs or anything else. So that affected the city and slowed us down a lot in terms of the projects that we were working on and the things that we were creating. Something simple as code enforcement. And so we really have to ratchet that up now and make up for the time lost. I mean, we lost over 2 years of a second term in that.
I think there are a lot of people who are looking at Newark and talking about what's taking place here. There is a lot of development that's very evident to a lot of people who come through Newark and, of course, live in Newark. And they talk about what's taken place since 2014 when you were elected in office. And now here you are seeking, or actually just elected now to a third term. And some people are talking about 2025. And I have to ask this. I go back to Insider NJ's Max Pizarro, who is well-sourced and well-connected to people. And he writes the other day that sources identify Ras Baraka as a likely 2025 gubernatorial candidate.
Well, he's talking to the same people over and over again. So he didn't get that from me, though. Let me just say that. I think it's people who, wishful thinking and trying to push you into things that you have. I mean, I haven't really thought that out, honestly. In full transparency, just was really inundated with, trying to get elected and getting my team elected and trying to figure that process out, So That's where we are. I mean, there's a lot of work to do. And honestly, if that presents itself, I'll think about it then. Right now, I'm still the mayor of Newark.
Would you want to be governor?
That's rough. If you would have asked me that 5 years ago, I would have probably said no with an expletive behind it. But, at the end of the day, like whatever, the folks take me or where I'm pushed to go, that's what I'm going to do. But right now, my mind is completely and positively focused on Newark.
Mr. Mayor, I don't hear you saying no.
Of course not. I'm not going to say no because I want to keep people guessing, keep them on their heels, right, and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do in case that eventuality presents itself.
All right, I want to move on to this Future of Public Safety report that just came out this week, and it talks about in vivid detail the public safety ecosystem in Newark, the various organizations that have been knee deep in making Newark a better place and a safer place to live, to work, and to play. And these groups, these organizations, you work with them over the years, and it seems that they are very much involved in working with your administration and making sure that they can do grassroots, ground level work that can make a difference in the city of Newark.
Absolutely. I just left a meeting today with Equal Justice USA at the waterfront down on Grafton with most of these organizations together and national organizations and funders and other places talking about what we're doing in Newark. And honestly, there's cities all over the country that have been engaging with us, whether it's Baton Rouge or Toledo or New York or other places that are trying to figure out, how to get this thing done. That we have hospital-based intervention where folks in a hospital talk to victims of violence to try to prevent retaliation. We have processes that give victims the opportunity to access resources and monies that they would normally get through victim advocacy or funds that they're missing. We do safe passageway to school, trying to make sure kids get back and forth to school safely. We have youth violence intervention team. We have adult intervention teams that are out here on the streets talking to people. And some of the, unfortunately, we have an increase in youth-related arrest and violence in the city that's associated with cars and guns. And we have 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds. And when I go to CompStat, I listen to them say they're going to do a soft handoff to the Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery with kids that they've come into contact with 3, 4, 5 times to try to get some help so they don't have to be in contact with them anymore. This is the kind of ecosystem we're creating to deal with trauma and try to reduce violence and crime before it happens or intervene in it immediately. Right. And we're all concentrating on the same group of people. Right. There are about 2-3% of the people in the city who cause about 60-70% of the violence in this town. So the police concentrate on them, and Office of Violence Prevention and all of our partners through Brick City Peace Collective concentrate on these neighborhoods and in these people. Then we will see a marked improvement in public safety.
Obviously some of that takes human effort, but it also takes resources. And Solomon Middleton Williams, the deputy director of the New York Community Street Team, whom expressed concern about missing out on available grant dollars. Here's what he told our Ang Santos today at a gathering.
Some folks who've been doing the work for a long time will not actually qualify to apply for some of these dollars, right? And that's unfortunate, right? So they have to have a 501c3 or they have to have, certain tax documents. A lot of groups who've been doing the work for years in public safety do not have these documents, right? They've been volunteering. So when the dollars do finally roll down from either the federal or the state level, they're not in a position to apply for these grants and get the resources, even though they're doing great work.
Mr. Mayor, is that kind of concern? Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, he's absolutely correct. And so that's why we bring Newark Community Street Team on to do the kind of help and support to these organizations, the technical support to stand them up and get them ready and right. And so when they go before state agencies or the municipal council, people shooting them down, saying all of this stuff. And I want to tell people that the work that they're doing is critical work. You're talking about kids who are 14, 15 years old that carry guns, that need to be redirected immediately before they get themselves hurt or other people hurt. People like the Hub that are doing this work, like New Direction, that are going into neighborhoods people won't go into, or talking to people that, frankly, the police can't talk to unless they arrested them. So we need these organizations to do safe passageway, to prevent violence after school that leads to gun violence later. We need this. This is not a joke. And, a lot of the folks locally, are not taking it as urgent as they should. And I understand that we need to have the paperwork correct and all of that, which is why we are getting ready to pay, or have begun paying Newark Community Street Team to begin getting these organizations, as Solomon talked about, to stand up properly. Because without that, they're going to miss out on not thousands of dollars, millions of dollars that are being made available by the federal government and state government.
Mr. Mayor, you talked about the youth crime, and one of the things that this report pointed out was that there is a generational gap impacting newer participants in the activism arena. Elder Newarkers are determined to see the future and come up with new possibilities to install or to instill their knowledge and organizing capabilities to younger community members. And we have Mark Comesinas, who's the executive director of My Brother's Keeper, who talked about this and trying to make sure that there is more involvement at a different level. And here's what he told us today.
We have to get this proactively into our middle schools and high schools, because our young people have insights. They have an understanding and a knowledge that we don't have about what's happening in our communities from their perspective. And we need to see them as assets in solving these problems, not them being the problem to be solved.
Mr. Mayor, as a former school official, how do you reach these this group that you're talking about? You reach them in school? How?
Yep, Mark Comesinas is absolutely correct. Executive director, My Brother's Keeper, is important. So the Hub has a youth high-risk intervention team that they train young people to go in to do conflict resolution in these schools and around these schools. That's exactly what we need. We have to give the kids the training and empower them that it's okay to stop conflict, to resolve conflict, to change the culture where every time there's a disagreement. In fact, when we first did the Safe and Newark Council report, we found that over 60% of the violence and homicides in the city were initiated because of personal disputes, not gang violence, not the things that people normally think are the progenitors of violence, but personal disputes, meaning I got a problem with this guy, whether it's based on perception, money, domestic issues. And so because there's no resolution, they resort to violence, which turns into gunplay, unfortunately. And so just getting people to resolve their issues without resorting to violence is a task, right? And the police get involved when guns start being pulled out, right? But these organizations need to get involved before people resort to guns. If you have a gun on you, more than likely you're going to use it if you're engaged in the kind of violence and interaction with other people that turns that way. And so it's important that we put young people in those spaces to help resolve the conflict and finally make them feel that it's okay to have your problems resolved.
Mr. Mayor, the report also points out that the Latinx community participation needs a boost.
That's absolutely the truth. We spoke about that, in fact, in our presentation to the providers in our next iteration of the amount of money that's going to go out, about $19 million additional dollars. We spoke because there have been issues, even recent issues, in communities that we have not even had like a Spanish-speaking individuals to be able to go into those communities and engage the young people or some even adults who are engaged in conflict, and that's necessary. I remember us having a big, huge meeting at Barringer that I had to go there with the superintendent and some other folks and some community-based organizations that stayed in that school for a couple of days to help resolve conflict, and the number of folks that could actually speak Spanish or part of the Latin community were very small in terms of violence interrupters. And so we absolutely, and I think they just, as a matter of fact, I'm positive that the Office of Violence Prevention had a kind of information session at one of the churches over in the north to begin to recruit, specific organizations to be involved.
Mr. Mayor, the report and finally talks about there are still concerns tied to the consent decree. Although abusive use of force and lethal encounters have decreased, most violent interactions between the NPD and community members are still targeting Black and Brown communities. The monitoring team and adjacent organizations must continue to revise existing standards and create lasting change as part of the police culture transformation. It seems that, yes, go ahead.
I think that's a difficult report and statement, given that the city is predominantly Black and Brown. The city is, over 80% Black and Brown. So most of the people that the law enforcement are going to come in contact with are Black and Brown people. This is not New York. This is not like a place that's like that. Most of the residents of this city, and so most of the violence and crime is happening in Black and Brown neighborhoods. So police officers are going to be in those neighborhoods, right? So what we have to do is figure out how to get them to deal with the public and resolve conflict and de-escalate, so it doesn't turn into a situation where force is needed to be used in the first place. But to just say that the majority of the people that are engaged are Black and Brown is actually is weak to me in Newark, given that the predominant amount of people in this city are Black and Brown and not white.
What about the monitoring team being involved in this equation and coming up with solutions to limit these kinds of interactions that can lead to bigger problems?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think that's what we're talking about, to limit, and I think we have limited them. I think that and most of the interactions that police are having now are not necessarily ones that have to deal with police criminal kind of interaction. We've deliberately and intentionally created opportunities for police to engage the public that is not about somebody getting in trouble, and we've done it purposefully. So I think that's important. And ultimately, a system has to be put in place to do this, not a monitor. See, what the monitor does is it means that we need somebody over us, and it has nothing to do with systems. We have to create systems that go past individuals and go past people. The reason that it's difficult to change is because systems is what created this. People don't want to create systems because they want to be the person that does it, which I think is a little egocentric, but it's also is driven by finances. And ultimately, we have to create systems that perpetuate this thing long past the staying of a monitor for over 20 years.
Ms. Mayor, I want to switch gears here because we don't have much time. I want to talk about a new initiative launched by the city just today called the NewarkHousingSearch.com, a website to help people in Newark find affordable housing. Why did you launch this?
Because it's a compliance measure. One, you run across a bunch of people who always say there's no housing, there's no affordable housing. And we know in the city that there is affordability. And then there are people who refuse to take people Section 8, and they're not supposed to do that. There are people who are supposed to have a certain amount of affordability and rent control in their property who get away from doing that. So we make them register, but we also list them on a website so people can it makes it easier for people to search for affordable housing in Newark, to fill out applications for affordable housing in Newark, and to go into these places. And it also gives us an opportunity to monitor the places that are supposed to have affordability in it and how many people are in those places and if they're actually doing it, and helps us match residents to places that we know have to have affordability in their property by law or by desire.
So it sounds as if part of this is keeping an eye on landlords who may be denying people equal opportunity for fair housing and so forth in the city of Newark.
That's absolutely one of the functions of it, absolutely. And to make it easier for people so they're not running around the city searching for affordable housing, and they run into this and run into that, and it becomes difficult for them and overwhelming, and they're spending a wealth of dollars just in transportation and application costs and all these things trying to figure this out, when we can make it a lot easier for them to identify affordable property, to register for it, apply for it online, to take care of whatever it is that they need to take care of without traveling all over the city to do so.
I understand the Gates Foundation and the Balmer Group and others are putting up some of the resources or all of the resources for this for the first year. Beyond the first year, how does this get funded?
Well, one, we're going to have to double down on the city side, obviously, to figure that out and raise dollars, in other ways to make it happen, state, federal, private sector dollars. But the city is going to incur some of this cost and it's worth it, to help people find affordable housing.
Just the other day, not that long ago, Shaq was in town and he was talking about had a topping off ceremony of his 33-story building in the city of Newark, and you were there, and he had a question for you. I want folks, if they didn't hear it, I want them to hear what Shaq asked you and asked of the city of Newark, his hometown. Here it is.
Mayor, how come all these dudes in New York getting streets named after them and I ain't got no street? What's happening?
Well, there you have it, Mr. Mayor.
Well, we gonna work on that, But in Newark has a policy that you have to be you have to be dead in order to get a street named after you. I think we've been able to do that for other people. Oh my God, it just died.
No, we can still hear you. Well, maybe the mayor's gone away there, but we also wanted to have the mayor give us a response on Shaquille O'Neal asking for a street to be named after him. The former NBA star, Hall of Famer, Newark native, TNT basketball analyst, you name it, pitchman for all the different companies that are out there. And the one thing that he does not have, Shaquille O'Neal does not have in his hometown, is a street named after him. And I'm sure by now it has been explained to him that street namings go for people who are no longer with us. Shaq, of course, is still very much with us. We also wanted to ask the mayor, and we hope that he rejoins us here in just a few minutes. We also wanted to talk to the mayor about the new project that's going to replace the original Seth Boyden housing development in the South Ward on some 15 acres. We're talking about Lionsgate Newark, as it is called, on some 15 acres, $100 million studio and sound stage that will play host to Hollywood, motion pictures, and the TV production industry as well, as they try to compete with other sound stages and studios that have gone up in Yonkers, in Hudson County, in Westchester County, and so forth, because there is quite a competition for these productions because they can mean so much for employment in places. New Jersey, of course, offering billions of dollars in tax breaks for these productions to come to town. And the governor just recently put out a letter inviting some of these businesses and other businesses for political reasons to set up shop in New Jersey. So we'll see what kind of an attraction this will be for the people in New Jersey and for the movie and TV and film industry. And we will talk more about that coming up in our second half hour with Steve Gorlick, who is the executive director of the New Jersey Motion Picture and Television Commission, and also John Schreiber, our friend, who is the president and CEO of the New Jersey Performing Arts Center. That's when we come back. Thank you for sticking around for the second half hour of Newark Today on WBGO. I'm your host, Michael Hill. We are talking in the second half hour about Lionsgate Newark, as they're calling it. And our guest this evening for this half hour, this conversation, as I said, is John Schreiber. He's the president and CEO of the New Jersey Performing Arts Center. John, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Michael. It's lovely to be with you.
Always good to talk to you, John. And also with us is Stephen Gorlick. He's the executive director of the New Jersey Motion Picture and TV Commission. And Stephen, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good. Let's get started here. We are talking about Lionsgate Newark, this $100 million studio and sound stage production to be built in the South Ward of Newark and to be completed, we hope, by March of 2024, perhaps even sooner. And let's get started here. John, this is an exciting development for the city of Newark. You were there as the ribbon was being cut. The mayor was there, and the housing executive director was there as well. Tell us about this, John.
Well, for us, it's a really, really exciting and what we believe is transformative project. As you know, Governor Murphy instituted TV film tax credits for the state of New Jersey a few years ago that are competitive and are as good as any in the country. That attracted, and as Steve will tell you, a tremendous amount of interest in film production in New Jersey. And we thought it'd be terrific if Newark could have its own TV film studio. Mark Burson, who is a developer in the city of Newark and a board member of NJPAC, identified the Seth Boyden site as a possible place for such a facility. And we need several acres. We have 15 acres approximately for the site. And NJPAC decided to advance this idea and began negotiations with the Newark Housing Authority to become the redeveloper of the site for this project. As we were in those negotiations with the Housing Authority, Robert Halmy, who is the principal at Great Point Media, which is a several $100 million film fund, came to us through Tammy Murphy, who was a friend of the Halmy families, and we started a conversation with Robert Halmy about funding a studio in Newark. So it was a coalition of the willing that made it happen, and between NJPAC as the redeveloper, with the stated goal of a TV film studio, the tax credits which incentivize Halmy, and Halmy as the studio operator, Lionsgate, to lease the facility. We got to our announcement a month ago, which couldn't be more exciting. It will mean several hundred new jobs when we do open, many of which we believe will be by Newarkers, as well as several $100 million in economic development revenue for the city. So it's a win-win-win as far as I can tell.
Good. And Stephen, let me bring you in this conversation. What does this new project, this studio and soundstage, what's it going to mean for Newark? What's it going to mean for New Jersey?
Well, the secret to creating an industry that has longevity in this state is having infrastructure. I keep using that word infrastructure. We all do, because filmmaking, motion picture and television production can be very transient. They can be here 1 year and gone the next, depending on the whims of politics and such. What you need is the building blocks of a permanent industry, and that is infrastructure. That is studios, equipment houses, post-production facilities, and the like. Once you have that, you have a strong industry that I think is too big to fail, and that's what will take us into the future. It can't just be motion picture and television activity, but that is what creates the opportunities. I mean, John wouldn't be pursuing this opportunity, neither would Robert Halmy, unless we had the tsunami of film and television activity that we've been experiencing since the film tax credit program was instituted. So it's it's a very, very exciting time for Newark, for New Jersey. I mean, for Newark, Newark is almost the epicenter of this. The amount of production that's gone on here. I did a check just before the show. 203 projects have been shot in Newark since the tax credit has been instituted in 2018. Now, some of them are just commercials, but we're talking a lot of TV shows and motion pictures and such. I mean, that is just Newark alone, and Newark certainly is one of the centers of production activity in the state.
Yeah, because I remember watching the Super Bowl halftime show, and there was a commercial I saw. I saw the big cathedral in one of those commercials as well. Of course, some of the Oscar-nominated movies recently, the Irishman. I saw a film that I think Halle Berry was in it called The Bruiser, and there were images there of Newark. Of course, The Joker was up for Oscar nominations and won some. And some of those scenes, of course, filmed in Newark. And so you mentioned, Stephen, that not just the industry knocking on the door in Newark and in New Jersey, but banging on the door.
Exploding into the state is what I would call it. I was this is about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. I was going out of the parking deck on University Avenue, our parking deck. I'm not joking when I say this. I looked to my left and there was a film crew doing a TV show. I looked to my right, there was another film crew doing a feature on the same street. And I'm saying Newark has definitely arrived.
What is it about Newark that has people wanting to film in Newark?
Well, a lot of projects obviously are set in big cities, and Newark sometimes stands in for Newark, as it did in the Many Saints of Newark.
Yes.
Or other many other projects, but oftentimes it's standing in for other cities like New York, of course, frequently. Chicago, Los Angeles, you name it, and New Jersey. Let's be honest, only has several cities that you would call large cities. Newark and Jersey City primarily, and Paterson, of course, are the biggest of them. There's not a lot of big cities here, so a lot of projects, as I say, are set in large city environments, and Newark in particular has an incredible variety of architecture, historic sites, art. How much shooting, John, let me ask you, has gone on just at the New Jersey PAC? I mean, I'm looking at all these projects that were shot just there alone.
It is remarkable. I mean, Michael, in the last month, we've had 4 different TV shoots at our facility.
Wow.
Wu-Tang Clan, FBI Most Wanted, Whitney Cummings doing her Netflix special. I mean, it's just, it's fascinating to me that so many of the scouts are choosing Newark as their location. I mean, one simple reason is it's cheaper to shoot TV in New Jersey than it is in New York. It's probably a third cheaper based on labor costs and all the other costs. So we're a compelling location. And Steve is right. Newark has amazing bones. There are these great sort of old buildings that can represent any great city in America if the director is creative. So this is a place people like to shoot in.
And let me just mention, since you just had the mayor on, he has been the administration has been amazingly cooperative. That's another reason why they're coming here, because there are some things that are just extremely difficult to get done in, say, New York City. They come here and they do all kinds of stunts and car crashes and all kinds of stuff, and just doing like the Many Saints of Newark, recreating the Newark Rebellion. We had to close down, a tremendous amount of area, and the city was just fantastic. The police department, the traffic engineering, you can't do that just anywhere. You have to be in a city like this that understands what it takes and what it's worth, and is going to cooperate.
And those scenes had a big city feel too.
Yeah,
they really do.
I mean, the massive scene at the end of, at the beginning and end of Joker with all the extras and such, they couldn't do that in New York. They came here even before the tax credit era to do The Dark Knight Rises, climactic scenes, because it took tremendous amount of preparation, but to use the Newark subway system where we were rerouting traffic and such, and also City Hall, which was basically turned over. So it's a great city with great architecture, and the cooperation is what allows us to take advantage of it.
John, did you ever think that the New Jersey Performing Arts Center would be used for the TV and film industry in a way like this when the Performing Arts Center was created, when it was first thought of?
I'm not sure that that was in mind when NJPAC came to be. We'll be 25 years old in the fall. Um, However, I will tell you that 10 years ago, Howard Stern decided that he would become a judge on America's Got Talent, and he insisted to his producers that the only way he would do the show is if the show was shot in the New York metropolitan area, because he lived on the Upper West Side. So the producers scoured the region, and NJPAC ended up as the place where America's Got Talent sat down for that entire 14-week summer season in 2012. And when that happened, I realized that this is a whole new business, certainly for the Arts Center, and also potentially for New Jersey. There was no TV film tax credit at that time, and so the amount of activity was really limited. But I saw a great opportunity for the Arts Center because, we spend about 20% of our budget every year at NJPAC on education and community engagement, free events, and education initiatives. And somehow or other, we have to pay for that. And if we can come up with new earned revenue streams that enable us to deliver against our mission, all the better for us. And TV and film was a thing for us that was a predictable revenue producer. And so after America's Got Talent left, and they came back for shorter stints for several seasons, we became a place where John Leguizamo, Adam Sandler, John Turturro, all sorts of artists came to do various television specials. So we saw this as a really significant business for the Arts Center. And then once those tax credits were passed under Governor Murphy for the entire state, Steve and I started talking many years ago about this, and Steve led a lonely life until those tax credits showed up, and now
But
of course he is like the first choice at the prom.
our time has come. It was a little tough for a few years there, but I'll tell you, you mentioned America's Got Talent. That really, it was before the tax credit was reinvented, but it gave a taste to what this could mean for the city. First of all, it wouldn't have happened without John made it happen. I'm going to tell you, and his crew. It was a very challenging operation, and they made sure that they had a wonderful location and they got the cooperation they want. I mean, NBC Universal was thrilled to be there, but it also gave a taste as to what film and television can do to change this city, to improve this city, because on the nights that they were shooting, whether it was 2 nights a week all summer long, the city, was alive. It was buzzing. All the restaurants were filled. You couldn't get a seat at a restaurant, a reservation. Thousands of people were coming in every week many of whom probably hadn't been to the NJPAC before and hadn't seen it before, or other areas, or hadn't been to some of the wonderful restaurants here. So it really gave a preview of what we're seeing now in an even bigger way.
You two keep talking about the tax breaks that came about a couple of years ago, and I'm curious about what you think of this. Some of these times when states have these tax breaks, as we've seen over the last 10, 15, 20 years, it's almost a seasonal thing, meaning that it's the season of Governor Murphy, and then it's the season of a Chris Christie, who will say, you know what, we're spending a lot of money, we're giving a lot of tax breaks, we're not seeing the kind of return that we want to see. And so, you know what, there's a movement in the executive branch, there's a movement in the legislative branch to say, you know what, we have to end this because we're giving away too much and we're not getting what we need in return. So does the Lionsgate Newark studio then make someone who would think like that to say, look what's happening here, look at the jobs that are being and so forth? Your thoughts, John?
Yeah, Michael, you're right on the money. I mean, one can question the ultimate value of tax credits, but keep in mind that the state of New York has had TV film tax credits for probably 25 years, and the explosion of that business in the state of New York is extraordinary, and predictable, and consistent, and truly meaningful for the revenues of the state. I mean, I think as far as Lionsgate Newark is concerned, we are placing the TV film studio in the south ward of Newark, which is an economically challenged ward of the city, where there's not enough small business operating successfully, where the opportunity for job creation is something that is really significant. And so the permanence of a place like Lionsgate Newark not only enables several hundred jobs at the studio itself, but it also encourages small businesses to open all around the studio site, And when I think the match here, the match is Steiner Studios in Brooklyn,
Yes.
which has been at the Brooklyn Navy Yard for
Navy Yard.
decades,
Yes.
and it truly transformed the neighborhood around the Navy Yard, all for the better, So without the tax credits, Lionsgate wouldn't be in Newark. Lionsgate is now making a significant 10-year commitment to Newark to be here, to lease that studio space. And I think that will mean a lot to the economic development opportunities for the ward and for employment opportunities. Keep in mind also that on the Seth Boyden site, there'll also be several hundred units of market rate and affordable residential for community members. So it's not simply a business play, it's also a community play.
And Stephen, is all that enough to discourage another administration from coming in and nixing the whole thing?
It's a simple equation. Without the tax credits, you don't have the production. Without the production, you don't have the studios, the post-production facilities and such. Prior to the reintroduction of the tax credit program, we had 0 sound stages, not one. Now we have 6 in the state. We have 3 more, maybe more than that. It's really more than that. 3 or 4 major studios and backlots being constructed in New Jersey in the next few years. So now you've got a real base of an industry here. And there are people who will in the future, yes, can lobby as an industry because they've invested in this city. And we now have a real industry here. It's not a temporary industry. It's not one that's going to swoop in and swoop out. In those other states where that may have happened, they didn't have the kind of infrastructure that we're trying to build now. I just was in Englewood Cliffs, where they're building Fifen Studios, beautiful post-production facility. Would not exist here without the tax credit. None of these studios would be here without that tax credit, and none of these motion pictures would be here for more than a day or two without the tax credit. So it is the vehicle by which all of this can happen. And I don't think anyone can look at the tremendous success we're having now and say, that would have happened anyway.
One of the things that people are talking about this studio and soundstage is the perspective of Newark people, Newark residents getting jobs there. And one of those concerns was expressed by Solomon Middleton Williams. He's the deputy director of the Newark Community Street Team. And he spoke to us earlier, and this is what he had to say about jobs for Newark residents and Lionsgate Newark.
That is an opportunity for the city of Newark to look back on its history, on the non-investment of people, right? And then to invest in people by making sure that people have jobs at Lionsgate, right? Those who live in Newark, for example, like if you file taxes in 2021, you should have those jobs.
I want to ask you, Stephen, and ask you also, John, how do you ensure that Newark residents benefit from this experience of having a Lionsgate Newark in their town for at least 10 years?
Well, that's the good part of having, the New Jersey Performing Arts Center as a partner in the project. What we're interested in is not only great TV and film being produced out of Newark, that'll make us proud, but also ensuring that Newarkers get as many jobs as possible. So I can say to that gentleman that that's a job one as far as we're concerned. And Robert Halmy, who is the owner of Great Point Media, the leader of Great Point Media, agrees with us 100%. One of the nice things about this project for us is that We'll also, as the Art Center, be engaged in creating the internship and apprenticeship programs for TV and film production that Lionsgate will be implementing. And Steve has a program like this with his commission, and we'll be collaborating with him on that work. We want kids to know that there are literally dozens of careers in film and television that they might engage in, and creating those career opportunities and awareness for kids is going to be central to our role in the project. The other thing is Newark Public Schools is going to build a new school literally adjacent to the TV film studio site, and we have agreed with Roger Leone, the superintendent, that we'll create curriculum so that these kids can again understand the opportunities that are available in this industry for them. So not only is it a job creator, my hope is that for our young folks, it's a job inspirer.
Yep. We as an example, may I give an example? We worked on a TV show it went from September to December of last year, called America's Big Deal. It was a competition show for USA Television. It actually filmed at Symphony Hall. We were working with Tanisha Laird there, and what we did was, and they spearheaded it. They had a production assistant boot camp, something we've done all over the state. They had it for Newark residents alone. You went to a 2-day intensive boot camp. You learned how to become a production assistant. You learned the vocabulary, how to use the equipment, all of that. You get a certification. Then right from there, they went right onto the show and worked for the next 4 months as production assistants on that show, and boom, they were off and running. That's what can happen. We're doing PA boot camps all over. That we've done them in Newark before. We're doing them all over the state, of course, and we're also working on job training programs and below the line training programs, because with all this production, not only does it provide the opportunities that we're looking for residents of the state, of the city, but with all this production coming in, we need more crew. A larger crew base. Even though we're in New York area, which has the second largest crew base in America, it's still not big enough with all this production going on between New York and New Jersey. It's amazing.
So, John, Stephen, let me ask you this: and so, are some of these productions then, to a certain extent, lacking or bringing in crews from other parts of the country so that they could fulfill their mission in New Jersey, in Newark?
Not so much other parts of the country, but you do have crews that are mixed New York and New Jersey. That will always be the case because, we have New Jersey people working in New York and vice versa. You don't want to create a border war and ruin opportunities for people, in our adjacent states. But you have America's Big Deal. I mentioned there were 375 jobs on that project. The Equalizer, filmed here for a long time. 200 jobs were created on that project, and it goes Lincoln Rhyme, Hunt for the Bone Collector. A lot of it filmed in Newark. 350 jobs last year, just from tax credit projects alone. 5,529 jobs created. Those are real jobs. And with the studios, now you've got those jobs where where people are coming in. Obviously on crews to work on them, and some of that crew base is absolutely going to come from that location. But you also have permanent jobs for for people working at the studio and who have that kind of expertise. So it's absolutely a job creator. We're about even though what we do as our film commission benefits the arts community, no doubt, we're really an economic development agency. So we're about bringing money in, having it spent in the local area with all the merchants and such. I mean, they just spend millions of dollars in the local community. They descend on the stores and such, and purchasing, renting, anything you can think of, and then creating jobs. That's what basically we're about.
Stephen, when I hear you talk about these different productions, what comes to mind is experience counts. We're talking about crews and individuals who may be working on one production for 2, 3, 4 months, and then another production is coming to town, and they can jump right into another job.
That's the way this industry works. And people, some say, well, they're not all full-time jobs. It is when you have one job from January to April, another one from May to October, and another one from October to December. It doesn't make a difference. Just the fact that's the nature of the industry. I don't want to. I may be politically correct if I call it a gypsy industry, but that's generally the idea. That's the way the industry works. You may look. You may work on a TV series like we have the Equalizer or whatever, and you may be on it for several years. That can happen. You can have that kind of stability, but it is an industry where, just like actors jump from job to job, so do crew members.
John, I
Michael, I want to just say a thing which may be useful to listeners, and that is, people may wonder, like, why is all this activity occurring? Why is all this filming going on? What's the story with that? I'm an old guy. I remember when I was a kid, there were like 3 networks and 5 channels, and that was about it. And
I remember those days too, John.
Do you? 2, 4, 5, 7, 9,
That's
11.
right. That's right.
13 maybe.
13,
Yeah, maybe 13. Hardly ever, but but now, I don't know how many of us are this way, but there's Netflix, there's Hulu, there's Apple, there's Amazon, there's Paramount, there's
Disney
Epic,
Plus,
there's
Peacock. Yes.
yeah, exactly. You name it, there's a streaming channel that is asking us to spend, $12 a month to subscribe, right? And how do they get us to subscribe? They create content that we will sign up for, and that is the reason that right now there is such an enormous scramble for studio space to film the zillions of hours of program that these folks are producing. And, we're the happy victim of all of that. But this would never have happened, 10 years ago. Right now, I don't know about you, I subscribe to like 4 or 5 of these, Sometimes I wonder why I do, but I do. And they're always delivering new content to me. And that's why Lionsgate, for example, is taking a bet and leasing the Newark studio for 10 years.
One of the things I'm curious about is you talk about business creation around the studios and because of the studios. Is that I remember working in New Orleans and in the industry as well, and people love to go to New Orleans to do productions because New Orleans has some of the best hotels in the country. Are we going to see more hotels coming to the city of Newark or in the immediate?
That's a good question. NJPAC is a real estate developer as well as a performing arts center, and I will tell you frankly that literally 2 weeks before pandemic, we were about to greenlight advancing a 4-star boutique hotel in Newark.
Wow.
I think we need one in this city.
Yes.
Whether we do it or somebody else is another story. But the reality is that Lionsgate Newark is literally 5 minutes from Newark Airport, and at Newark Airport there are 17 hotels. So,
wow.
so folks can get taken care of.
Right, but not in the Central Business District, though.
And it'll encourage other types of business. When Gabrielle Union was here last year shooting The Perfect Find, which was shot mostly in Newark, there was a story that was wonderful in the paper about her going from store to store talking about all the wonderful things she's buying. It was like an advertisement for the city of Newark, and that will develop from having all of this activity here. And there is certainly something to be gained from having all these famous people, seeing the city and becoming our ambassadors of to the world.
Well, I want to thank, we'll have to leave it there. I want to thank John Schreiber with New Jersey Performing Arts Center, Stephen Gorelick with the New Jersey Motion Picture and TV Commission for this terrific conversation about Lionsgate Newark. And I want to thank our crew here as well. Producer Ang Santos, call screener Ken Downey Jr., and show engineer Corey Goldberg. I'm your host, Michael Hill. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. This is WBGO Newark.